Everyone again, and welcome any newcomers. I don't have much to say, just thanks so much for being here, Steve, from City Wine Market. We really appreciate your expertise and your time. I'm going to go ahead and hit record now. Oh, wait, I believe
I did.
Great. So we are talking about Rhones with Steve Wilson from City Wine Market. Thanks for being here, Steve.
Well, thank you for having me, and I welcome everybody. So today we're going to talk about the Rhone Valley, which is in the southern, sort of south central southeast corner of France. It's a very old wine region. I mean, crazy old. Originally, this area. The first early rumblings literally with the Rhone Valley were about 40 million years ago. And at the time, what happened, basically, two large mountain ranges, the French Alps and the Massif Central, pulled away from each other. It created a void, and the Mediterranean flooded in. This kind of rift continued up and started drawing off water from I think as far as Switzerland, the river goes. So, but this area has experienced a lot of geologic events, volcanic, again, plates shifting, moving around, lots of erosion. You can see behind me what looks like somebody abandoned some river rock in somebody's vineyard, but that's actually what this part of the Rhone Valley looks like. Much of the topsoil has moved, and you're left with the remnants of water erosion, large stones. The French referred to them as galettes, but they're fairly, I mean, in some parts of the Rhone, they're fairly sizable. I mean, grapefruit cantaloupe size. In other places, they're finer. In some places, it's more river silt, and these rocks are buried. So, but this area has experienced a lot of geologic change. So when the river was created, humans, always liking, preferring the path of least resistance, started moving up the river to trade, to find other products that they didn't have in other parts. But it became a fairly impressive trade route. And so you have humans, you have grapes, we end up with wine. And so this area is a very, very old. I mean, the Romans, the Moors, migrating groups have been through this area since the dawn of time, essentially. So because of all of this geologic, these many geologic events, we have soil that's really complex. In some cases, as I said, it looks more like river rock, but you go a little bit under that, you get clay, you can get chalk, because again, there was the Mediterranean flooded this area. So there were marine crustaceans that would fossilize and become chalk and calcium carbonate and things like that. And so the grapes that exist here have for a long time. That's the first thing. And number two, have the ideal setting for them. So I think, what else do I want to talk about? Oh, well, okay. So there are really two sub-regions, I guess you would say, of the Rhone. The northern Rhone is further up the valley, granitic cliffs. I mean, lots of volcanic activity occurred up there, or igneous activity occurred up there. And so you have rocky, jagged cliffs. And in that area, there are really two primary grapes that do very well up there. Syrah, and Viognier, and we'll have a Viognier in a few minutes. In the southern Rhone, it looks more like this. This is where we are. We're in the southern Rhone, and the southern Rhone is a little more hospitable to more grapes. Grenache, which is the main component of the red wine, the second wine that we'll have, and a roughly dozen plus other grapes that do very well in this region. And so blending is definitely part of this region. Very few wines are truly monovarietal. Even in the north where Syrah reigns, many of them are actually co-fermented with Viognier. So a red wine co-fermented with a white wine, and there's reasoning for that. But in the southern Rhone, lots of grapes are blended. In fact, in the region of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, a dozen or more grapes can be blended. So this is an area that's really dialed in their style. They've dialed in the grapes. The grapes know where they want to be and do quite well being here. The other nice thing about this wine, this region rather, is that there is a lot of agriculture in the general vicinity. And so, as we've often said, things that grow together go together, and the wines of this region have many food companions. They're really well-made wines for the dinner table. But I think before we continue further, I'm gonna try to share a screen, and we're gonna watch a video. It's a video of Michel. Oh, actually, before we start, I should probably provide some background on Gassier, because the video is in French, has subtitles, but I'll give you the cheat sheet. Domaine Gassier, Michel Gassier, is a fourth generation wine grower in the southern portion of the southern Rhone. There's a region there called Costilla de Nîmes. It's always been kind of the lesser region, although in the last 15-20 years it's actually been elevated in status. So the wines are getting the just accolades that they deserve. But Michel Gassier and his wife Tina have had a winery in Costilla de Nîmes for a very long time. And when our store opened in 2010, we had their wines, and they were fantastic. And they were very small production, and it was very much a winery where you knew where your wine was coming from. And I maybe this is not a fair comparison, but it makes sense to me. Hopefully it'll make sense to you. I liken Michel and his wife Tina to the band that you go see at your local nightclub. You go into this local bar, and there's some musicians on the stage, and they're just fantastic. And you know that they love being there, and that's their crowd, and they play. And then a promoter comes in and says, you know what, I can get you into a stadium show. I can get you into a bigger venue. I can provide you the money and fame. And so that's sort of what happened. Michel signed with a very large importer, an importer called Eric Solomon, very famous importer, great portfolio. But Gassier wines disappeared for a little while because they were being they were doing the stadium tour. And several years back, I don't recall exactly how many, I would say 3 to 4, Michel and his wife Tina decided to discontinue being imported by this large importer and go back to a smaller venue, essentially return, as I like to think, return to the nightclub, because it's more personal that way. And so actually today, Gassier wines in Kansas, at least, are brought in by a very good importer friend of mine who lives in Lawrence. So you'll notice on the back of the bottle, it says W Direct Lawrence, Kansas. So this is not a US importer. This is just importing to the state of Kansas. But Gessier is, we're very, very happy to have the portfolio back. So with that kind of rundown, I'm going to play his video because it's really, we in the business we call this eyewash. It's drone footage, it's music, but you get to see the people who made this wine, the place that it's being made, the thinking that they have. I mean, they are very much, because this place is so old, because this place has so much character, the winemakers in this area are very sensitive to protecting the brand, to maintaining the tradition. You really, after several hundred years of making great wine, you don't really want to be one to drop the baton. So I think this video, again, at the very least, it's pretty, but it shows a general overview of where these wines come from and why they are the way they are. So let me see if I can.
There's a problem with the sound, Steve. We're not getting the sound.
Oh, it's subtitled anyway.
I don't know how to do it because it's on his.
Yeah.
Hold on.
It's subtitled anyway.
Yeah,
Not getting any sound.
yeah, I think you need to unshare, and then before you share, there's a little box that says sound on it or something like that. At the bottom, let me see. It's at the bottom. It says share sound before you share the screen, or before, yeah. See if that, you just have to check that box.
This is so good.
Sorry.
Yes, this is always hard with videos.
Oh, there we go. Okay,
There you go.
let's
Okay.
try this again.
Take two.
Take two. Hold on. Let's see if we can't get this back.
Maybe.
Are we good?
No.
All right. Well,
We can just watch the beautiful video because it has captions.
all right. Okay.
You can watch the video and read the subtitles.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
What is the T word? It looks like
Terroir.
Oh, thank you.
That's the earth, the ground.
Yeah. I can't read it.
All right. Let me get back here. Sorry.
I was playing some nice French accordion music in my head, despite the lack of sound.
All right. Let's see. Sorry. I don't know why this is this way.
I was just envisioning Marcel Marceau. Silence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I back now? No.
Yeah. Your city wine is up, not you.
Uh, sorry.
No problem. It always, for some reason, it seems like it should be straightforward, but
While he's not looking, we can all be drinking a little extra of the wine. That's my plan.
Dive in.
I like it.
Oh yeah, it's delicious. Like I said, we've had this at a couple of our dinners.
The first place I had this was in Paso Robles. Oh, we're on. I'm sorry. Oh, poor Steve.
Did we lose you, Steve?
Yeah. I don't know why exactly my background is not coming back up, but
maybe you could try leaving and rejoining. I don't know.
That's kind of the unplug and replug version of this game here.
Yes. Yeah. Turn it off and turn it back on. That's
Leave and come back. Rebooting.
Oh man.
Well, I'm no authority, but I can tell you, I've started drinking this wine and it is delicious.
Really is.
Yeah. The smell alone is the aroma, I should say, is so nice.
Hopefully we haven't lost Steve forever.
I know.
let's see.
That would be tragic.
He's
One more, maybe?
Here he is.
Oh, there.
He's back. He's just trying to get his video going, I think.
There we are. Hello.
Congrats.
Hello. Sorry. I had to go to the dark side of the moon. I'm back on the other side. So apologize for the train wreck of the video, but hopefully you noticed that when they were digging those core samples, the soil on the top vastly different from the soil on the bottom. I mean, that is that's really the magic of this area. You know, you would dig when they plow the fields in a lot of these vineyards just to till up weeds and things. Portions of it will turn white, portions of it will turn orange, portions of it will turn gray, just because of the soil that's just right below the surface. So, you know, wine is made in the vineyard, so it's very much the complexity of the soil is what is going to define the nature of the wine. So let's talk about the wine. So this first wine is 100% Viognier from Gassier's property. It is Viognier is as I said, it's a grape that's evolved in this area. It has very, I mean, the good thing is it likes the climate that this region provides. So the days here fairly warm, actually. They're close enough to water that there is a little bit of a cooling effect, but the days are warm. The nights, air blows down through the mountains and the canyons, and it's actually a wind. They call it Le Mistral, but it's a fairly aggressive wind. But that cools down the grapes. And one of the challenges with growing Viognier is that it has a really intense aroma. It has delicious richness. The texture is almost described as oily because of that richness. Its problem is that it doesn't always get enough acidity. Because of the warmth, it really needs those cool nights, but it needs something else, and that is actually that chalky layer, the fossilized, you know, oyster shells and things like that exist under the surface. That helps develop acidity and retain acidity in this wine that would, without that, I mean, it's fairly low in acid to begin with, but without that little pop of acid, it really does change the wine. But so Viognier, very aromatic. I mean, it's like, it almost reminds me of walking in the outside. I wouldn't say it's like right up close, but when you walk through one of the great department stores in Paris or London, and you're kind of maybe one room away from the perfume counter, you smell just these beautiful smells, and they're kind of swirled together, but they're not heady, they're not intense. I mean, overwhelming rather. It's just kind of wafting, and that is Viognier. Viognier has its flavor profile is fairly typical, and what I always loved about this wine is that the typicity of it captures absolutely what it's supposed to be. So the textbook definition profile of Viognier is peaches, sometimes white peaches, little bit of a minerality, maybe some tangerine, and that can be fresh, like, you know, the little clementines. It can be mandarin oranges that come out of the can. Usually there's a little bit of a white flower note, honeysuckle most times. Sometimes it's sort of a nondescript, maybe lily of the valley, but some other white flower. But just this beautiful perfume that kind of wafts out of this wine. And I mean, it's amazing because nature made this. This is nature's work. But let's taste this.
There is a question in the chat about the video. The video mentioned pardon my pronunciation, the Camargue.
Yes.
Is that where the wild horses? Is that where there are wild horses in the marshes?
Oh, I actually don't know that answer. Camargue is a region very close to. So the property actually. I mean, the estate has property in several locations now. It used to Camargue may be a sub-region of Costa de Nîmes at this point. I don't know whether I know the wild horses, but I don't know whether that is the same region, unfortunately.
Maybe I can see what I can find out.
Yeah.
There is
So,
another. Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead. No.
There's one more question popped up here about the label that it says bioorganic. Is that a new effort by Gassier?
No, and that's, thank you for feeding that question, because it's really important. So bio is basically the European, or maybe actually French version of organic. So anytime bio, it's not biodynamic, it's just organic. But the reality in the fine wine world is that the vast majority of producers today are using organic and biodynamic techniques. Whether they are certified or not, and whether they can put that label on the bottle or not is a different question. Usually it's very costly to be certified organic, but many growers, in France particularly, believe that you make a better wine when you let the vineyard essentially struggle and take care of itself, more than allowing humans to come in and apply things that lessen the natural challenges to the vine. So my guess on this one is that the vast majority of what they produce is in fact organic. They may be limited as to where they can label it, as in maybe all of the fruit from this one was certified or met the standards. But no, I will say that like I said, the vast majority of growers that I experience, all over the world, have adopted organic or biodynamic farming methods. And it really is, it's kind of, I can say this because I'm not a grower, but I would argue that probably initially, when organic wines became, or organic foods became a thing, there were a lot of producers who took these steps to be certified. Now, it may not have actually meant that they were making great wine, but they wanted the marketing ability to be certified. A whole lot more were just, my vineyard is important, is sacred to me. I don't want to apply something to it that might show up in my wine, might change the trajectory of this vineyard. And so, like I said, I worry a lot less about wines being organic or biodynamic than I used to, just simply because it's actually come down to, with climate change, organic farming has an advantage over conventional farming in periods of climate change, because if the vines are better suited to manage the changes, and you don't have to constantly tweak them with chemicals or other things like that, your vines are healthier. They produce better wine because they're healthier. So it's kind of funny. I think the movement may have started out as, hey, maybe we can get a couple extra bucks for being certified, to where it is today, which is it's a good business decision to do this, aside from the fact that we can tell people about it. It makes better wine, and it makes our vines more resilient. So you're definitely seeing that. But yeah, this is, I would imagine that eventually the issue, particularly in old Europe, will be less of an issue, because everybody will just be doing it the same way. They're still conventional farmers, but generally they're producing bulk wine. They're not producing this kind of wine. So let's see. I did that answer? Maybe answered and then some.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, I love this wine. I mean, it has this kind of white peach. I'm getting more kind of the canned mandarin orange off this one rather than fresh, but pretty white flowers in the springtime kind of smells, or in the summer. Um, just an exotic nose. And where this wine, it really shines with food, um, particularly things out of the water. My personal favorites for this one, probably halibut. I love just pan-seared halibut, little brown butter sauce, maybe some capers. Scallops do very well with this. Shrimp does very well with this. But you think, I mean, these vines are kind of dipping into an ancient seabed and taking a taste maybe, and so they really do well with things out of the water. Even tilapia, fish tacos with tilapia. Although actually, I will say I like a little more acidity with fish tacos, so I'm going to back the fish taco out. But pan-seared tilapia minus the tartness that you might find with fish tacos. Very delicious. But yeah, this is a wonderful food wine. Any more questions on this one?
I wondered, I was having some of the Merck's like spicy, was it hot feta dip?
Yeah.
And I was wondering about like if that's a bad idea, like if it kind of blows out your palate or
the challenge with, I'm trying to think of feta, yeah, probably. Here's the challenge. The challenge with Viognier is that it has, as I said, it has a low acidity. So if you have something with a lot of acidity, it will accentuate the fact that this doesn't have a lot. So if you paired something that was really acidic with this wine, and that acid could be, I mean, it could come in the form of cheese or something like that. But if you had something very acidic, this wine would seem sort of flat. So one of actually, and it's kind of a cheat, but one of the things that I do like is finding cheeses with just a little bit of tartness. I think feta probably, it does have the saltiness, so I'm trying to think of whether that would affect the perception of sweetness on this wine. It might. Cheese, any of like Gruyere, Swiss, Comté, any of the kind of the fruity, nutty, hard dried cheeses do very well with this. And they have a little bit, like a Swiss has just a touch of tang to it. Doesn't have a ton of salt, doesn't have a ton of sugar, but just kind of a little fruit and tang. And that pairs actually like fondue Suisse. The old Swiss fondue that does really well with Viognier. Wonderful. And it's, look for things that have similar creaminess. I mean, butter sauces, cream sauces, it will like that. I mean, that's why I love halibut. Halibut's a little bit of a richer fish. And it just pairs beautifully. Salmon actually also, because of if it's got some nice fat to it, also wonderful. But yeah, creamy texture, gorgeous nose, aromatic, and some nice stone fruits and flowers in the background. All right, let's move on to so sort of confusing. So the first wine that we had was from Domaine Gassier, and this one is from Michel and Tina Gassier. They actually have three brands essentially where they market different wines through those channels. And I can't even remember the name of the third winery, but there are three. So while the name on the label is different, the same winemakers. So Côte Rhone is the quintessential red blend. It is been around again forever, hundreds and hundreds of years. The dominant the Côte du Rhone's generally, we're talking about the Southern Rhone. And in the Southern Rhone, the red varietal Grenache kind of reigns supreme. Grenache, again, very well suited. It doesn't mind drought. When drought happens, it doesn't mind hot days. It likes cool nights. It loves to struggle in this rocky, gravelly. You're not going to plant wheat here, as an example. This is not the place where wheat is going to grow. It needs the right agricultural product, and Grenache for this region is very well suited. It'll worm its way down through the rocks and produce really, really nice wine. Stylistically, Grenache, for the most part, red fruit driven. So think like, red cherries, red plums, raspberries, maybe, red currant, but red cherries and berries is kind of the profile of Grenache. For the Côte du Rhone, they're often blended in other things, because what they're trying to make is a complete wine. And Grenache can certainly be complete on its own, but if you add in a little bit of Syrah, which they did here at a percentage of 10%, and they also added in 15% of a grape called Mourvedre. In Spain, that's also a grape called Monastrell. But there you're going to get a little bit of richness, a little bit of darker color, a little more tannic structure. I mean, Grenache is mostly red fruit driven, so Syrah and Mourvedre can give a little bit of the darker, maybe some blackberry notes or some black cherry notes. But and in the case of Côte du Rhone, and you'll even see it, you'll even see it on the bottle. There's a sprig of rosemary. Côte du Rhone has this green herbs de Provence kind of profile tucked in the back, and you got fruit, you got acid, you've got maybe even a little pepper spice, you've got dried herb. So the setup for having this with food is just off the chart. It's so food friendly. So let's it smells like the Rhone. Dark fruits. I'm getting the red plum, but the black cherry kind of sitting there. There's a little bit of dried herb. I don't know if it's rosemary, maybe rosemary and thyme, but some herbal notes there. Very silky texture. The fruit continues. You get nice acidity, some dryness, some tannic structure there, but just really, I mean, a very it's like the Swiss Army wine. It just does everything. And so if with respect to food pairings on this, once again, things that grow together go together. And not surprisingly, in this area, I mean, you look at the soil behind me, there is no soil. So, grazing cattle through here probably would not be very productive. It probably would destroy the vines. But sheep are going to be perfectly happy to meander through the vineyard to find little green things that happen to be lucky enough to pop up through the gravel, maybe eat off some of the suckers that develop in the springtime at the base of the root, at base of the vine. But sheep and wine go together in this region because they are two agricultural products that very happily coexist. So, lamb chops, leg of lamb, lamb shanks, anything lammy is gonna love this wine because it's got kind of that. I mean, it's got enough acidity to deal with some of the fattiness of the wine, but then all the complementary flavors. I mean, the dried herb, the pepper, everything else. I mean, it's like you've got sauce in your glass, and a great. I mean, we often talk about wine being a condiment. I mean, this is definitely an example of wine being a condiment for this region and the foods of this region. But roasted vegetables, eggplant, earthy things, mushrooms, onions. I love sauteed onions, cooked down onions on little flatbread is wonderful with this, but just a really food friendly wine.
There is a question here about, it says the label says that the grapes were aged in concrete vats. What benefit does concrete provide?
So concrete is used quite a bit, and there are a couple of considerations. One is that when you age wine in oak, and even when it's neutral oak, some of the tannic structure of the wood. So tannin is that mouth drying astringency that chocolate has, coffee has, tea has. It's derived from woody materials. It's a chemical compound that essentially dehydrates our tongue. I mean, when you are chewing on nut skins, you get a couple like those red peanuts, Spanish peanuts, and you chew on them. Suddenly you notice that your mouth is completely dry. Your tongue is just bone dry. That's also found in oak. And so winemakers will often choose, well, wait, maybe the wine doesn't need any more tannic structure. Maybe it doesn't need the benefits of barrel aging. And concrete, actually, it depends on what the winemaker is looking for. Sometimes the concrete is completely sealed. There is no porosity. It doesn't breathe. Other producers actually want a little bit of air to permeate through the concrete so that it softens the wine. But concrete aging, oftentimes, I think we're seeing more wines that are aged in concrete because it does tend, if the wine doesn't need the tannic structure from additional barrel aging, there is a thought that that aging in concrete, and they've actually there's a lot of work being done with amphora. So and these are not so much clay pots as they are just concrete vessels in the shape of an amphora. But concrete eggs, there's been a lot of work with using concrete as a fermentation vessel, because it does it mitigates some of the heat that is given off during fermentation, which keeps the wine a little fruitier. It also imparts it imparts fewer flavors. You usually get a little bit of a minerality note to it, just aging in concrete. But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more stuff being done in concrete, just because it's also considered obviously more environmentally friendly. In France, particularly, granted, you have to take into account that their forests that they source oak, that they source their oak barrels from, have been managed for hundreds of years to do this very service. So, but the downside is, if for a really, really nice French oak barrel, they do have to chop down a tree that may be 50 to 100 years old to make that barrel, and one tree might make one barrel. So yeah, again, we were talking about the organic factor. A lot of winemakers are looking at how can we be a little more environmentally friendly in the production of our product, and using neutral oak, so using barrels multiple times, and using concrete, amphora, things that have a renewable, that you can use more than once. Because in most cases, when winemakers choose to use oak barrels, they're making a really, really nice high-end red wine. They might use that once, maybe twice, but no more than that. Now, it doesn't get discarded. It usually goes off to, say, Scotland, where it gets filled with Scotch, or maybe another a beer. There is an afterlife for barrels after they've been used. But obviously, if you're using resources once or twice, I think anybody can argue that's probably not the most efficient use of things, of natural resources. So yeah, concrete is definitely stepping in. And I've seen some really cool stuff. I mean, they can embed cooling lines into the concrete so they can maintain the absolute perfect temperature of that tank while it's fermenting or while it's aging. They can decide whether they want, they can pretty much essentially seal the inside of barrels so there's no air permeating it, or they can make it porous. So there are a lot of things that you can play around with concrete that I think we're going to see a lot more of.
And there were a couple follow-up questions with that as well. How does the concrete compare with steel or terracotta?
So stainless steel obviously does not breathe at all, and that's in part its benefit. And they can jacket them with cooling lines, so they can do a lot of the same thing. Terracotta, so some of the amphora that they're doing, I mean, I've seen both amphora in simple concrete and also in terracotta, but no, there is a lot of interest in that because, well, in part, those are traditional. I mean, the concept of the amphora was basically designed so that a human being could lug around a whole bunch of wine. I mean, that's how that shape came to be. And those wines are what made wines.
Please stop.
What's that? Oh,
I think maybe that was a accidental comment.
Oh, gotcha. No, the terracotta does breathe, and so it will impart just a little bit of air into the wine, which can soften it. It also, I do notice that there is more of a minerality, and generally it's not a wine that starts with no minerality and you put it into terracotta and it develops minerality. But I mean, I've been tasting a lot of wines from Sicily, where many of them are aged in amphora, and the wines by themselves have, I mean, even a wine in stainless steel has that minerality, but you put it in the terracotta or the concrete egg, and it just changes. It becomes, there's more complexity. You notice the minerality more. But yeah, in general, stainless steel is used where they don't want any influence of oak at all, and generally they don't want any influence of air. So typically you're going to see, I mean, you can ferment red wine in stainless steel. That's done all the time. Aging in stainless steel, I would say it happens more with white wine than it does with red. Certainly most Sauvignon Blanc, for example, it would, unless you're buying a really, really high-end Sauvignon Blanc, and I will say they are delicious. But the vast majority of the Sauvignon Blancs that are under, say, $50, don't see oak by design. They want the freshness of the fruit to shine through, and so that's, stainless is really a way of just preserving that freshness.
I will say, just to return to the earlier question about the wild horses, it looks like that person was correct who suggested that was the region where the wild horses are roaming in the marshes. So
yeah,
interesting.
Well, it's and you can't really. I'm trying to figure out where the river is, but that marshland is really important for this region, because it does moderate the temperature, and certainly it doesn't surprise me, given that this area has, like I said, has been an area of human migration forever. Horses were obviously used extensively, for moving trade and people and farming. And so the fact that the horses are just as happy hanging out here as the grapes doesn't, it's that makes a lot of sense.
I have a question just about, I was telling Jack that I picked up the wine just shortly before this session began, the white wine, and I put it in the freezer, and I was like, I don't know if that's a bad move, if it's a bad move to cool it too quickly, if that affects anything with the taste, or.
No, that's a great technique. In fact, taking a wet paper towel and wrapping it and sticking it in the freezer. I mean, the problem is you definitely want to set a timer. I have blown up a lot of wine in my freezer doing that, but you wrap a wet paper towel around it, stick it in the freezer. It draws the heat out very quickly and gets it at a good temperature fairly quickly. I mean, I would say probably within 20 to 25 minutes it's at temp. Yeah, there's the only problem is when you forget it, and the next morning or next day you go and you've got this delightful, very sticky slurpee that has been poured all over your freezer.
Yes, yeah, exploded wine popsicle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not good. Any other questions on the red or on the white?
I think Jack should, if there are no other questions, I feel like Jack should share the snacks that he had today, because they sound
yeah.
As
what
usual.
You eat, man?
Okay, I had some pretty good ones. I thought of France, and I did stuffed mushrooms with crab and goat cheese and juniper berry, and it was, particularly with the red, excellent.
Yeah.
And then I did a little tartlet of melted brie with walnut and raspberry, and another tartlet of shrimp with bacon and dill mayonnaise.
Nice.
And there wasn't, but I've had Gassier before, and particularly the Viognier, and there isn't a lot of food that it doesn't go with. I mean, these are really fruit-friendly wines.
Yep.
So they were excellent.
But I want my lamb.
Yeah, I did make my wife lamb, for which I'm being condemned for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
My greedy wife.
The lamb, I will say that my favorite wine with lamb actually is the Syrah from the north, because Syrah from just, I don't know, maybe an hour or so drive up, I mean, north of along the river, the Syrah develops sort of a mintiness. It's kind of funny. They've studied this. It's actually, everybody's like, oh, it's the terroir of the northern Rhone. Actually, it's not at all. It's a bacteria that just happens to exist there, that when it is present, it sort of smells like eucalyptus, or menthol, not eucalyptus. And so you have that, I mean, who doesn't love lamb with mint sauce? And so you have this wine that just says, hey, I've got everything but the lamb. You bring the lamb, I'm good. Yeah, lamb with Rhone wines is just a delicious pairing. I do want to say, go ahead.
Besides the mint, does it cut the fat? I love lamb, but it is fatty.
Yes.
So does this cut it a little?
Yes, the tannic structure and the acidity of the Syrah absolutely cuts right through the fat. And it has, the Syrah from the Northern Rhone has just a little bit of kind of a gaminess, not overt, but when you take lamb, which often has a little bit of gaminess to varying degrees, that gaminess seems to disappear with the Syrah. The Syrah, I mean, it's almost like they're on equal footing. So that aspect is less intense. So you really do taste more of the meat, more of the wine. Yeah, it's so good. I did want to say yes, we're running out of time. So the bonus part of all of this is that next Wednesday, the 19th, is that the 19th? Anyway, next Wednesday from 5 to 7, we will have at City Wine Market, we'll have a representative from the national brand manager for Gassier will be in the store, and we're going to be tasting about 5 different wines, not these 2. So it'll be 5 new wines from Gassier. The tasting's 5 to 7. It's come as you are. It's free. But we'll have somebody from the winery in the store, so you'd have the opportunity to ask further questions, taste more of Gassier's great portfolio, and yeah, you all are welcome.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's my job to be the timekeeper here, and we're about out of time. So I want to thank Steve, as always, and Therese for a great evening of wine tasting. And also remind everybody there's a couple events coming up next week you might be interested in. Retirement Boot Camp has their pop-up event, a Zoom event called Gardening as We Age. It's a Zoom, so we're still open to people registering for that. And I think that should be pretty interesting. It's being done by the president of the Master Gardeners of Lawrence. And on Thursday, no, that's Monday, and I think Wednesday, I'm sorry. Wednesday, we have Dessert and a Movie, which this week is on this month is on climate change. And we do have a scientist and lecturer talking about that as well as a movie. So that should be pertinent and interesting. So things to look forward to. And until we get to those next events, thank you all for joining us this evening. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next month at this event. And a little applause for Steve.
Thank you.
Hey,
Everybody
thank
be
you,
well.
Steve.
Thank you. Don't let it go to his head. No. Well deserved. Well deserved.
Good stuff.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like the cheese and Triscuit. Yeah, plain. Okay.
Yeah.
Plain.
Yeah. Let's see. I think you want to stop the recording.
Oh.